The Country That Shook is a charitable project that's mission is to empower Nepalese people to live fulfilled lives by providing education and resources. It began back in 2015 as I was travelling around Asia for a year. 3 months in, I made a 40-hour train journey from Mumbai to the Nepalese border, racing against time to cross before my visa ran out. I spent a couple of days in Lumbini, birthplace of the Buddha, before taking a bus to picturesque Pokhara, staying in a beautiful spot with views of the lake. I arrived there on the 23rd of April 2015. Just before noon on the 25th of April, there was the 7.9 Richter earthquake that caused devastation across the country. As you can see, Pokhara was within the epicenter, but was relatively undamaged. Most of the tremors moved east to the Kathmandu Valley. The disaster was well documented, sparking fear in my friends and family, but it was actually the aftershocks that were more scary than the quake itself, coming at any time in the day or night. I did not want to sleep for fear of another tremor that might bring buildings down around me. The experience sparked a lot of anxiety, and even more so as I left the country a week later, feeling guilty for my ability to get on a bus and go, when for so many that wasn't an option. This is their home. Questions about whether I'd done the right thing filled my mind. It was on that 8-hour bus journey that I wrote a story about a little girl trapped in the quake. As I continued my diverted journey around Asia, I began to draw. Purely for me at first, as a therapy, to have a project to focus on. But as I continued, the body of work grew, and I had a drawing for each verse of the story. I had to decide whether it was really a personal project or something that I could use to give back, maybe even to alleviate that guilt. I used Kickstarter to help me decide. I wanted £2,200 to pay for 1,000 copies of the storybook that I had created. This amount would pay for everything up front and allow me to give 100% of the money that I made back to Nepal. It paid off, and on the 24th of July, the target was reached, jumping to just over 3,000 by the 1st of August, less than 4 months after the quake. As I was in China as part of my route, I decided to get the printing done there, just on the border with Hong Kong, and was able to visit the factory where they were printed. As the books were shipped slowly back to the UK, I continued my travels, working remotely from Vietnam to get the books stocked in independent shops in the UK, to get some beautiful photography of the book done by a very kind friend, and to continue to get coverage in newspapers and on blogs. When I did return to the UK in early 2016, I did talks in schools, sharing with the students the plight of the children in their own age in Nepal, some of whom still had no school to go to. We discussed earthquakes themselves and what it might be like to be in one, as well as reading the story and talking about my journey. The response from children always amazes me, with humbling experiences like children handing me their lunch money because they've decided that children in Nepal need it more than they do. I do presentations at numerous design agencies in London, the industry that I work in, and had market stalls to sell the products too. When I had raised around £7,000, I started to seriously think about where I wanted this money to go to. Naively at first, I had thought that I would be able to find a community to give it to, but remotely that's not really possible, and anyone I did speak to couldn't confirm or document where the money would be going. In June of 2016, after meetings and research, I partnered with the Gurkha Welfare Trust to fund the rebuilding of a school. After 2 potential rebuilds fell through, I was set up to fund Sri Barbat School in Silokhumbu, to the east of Kathmandu towards Mount Everest. The school had been damaged in the quake and 4 new classrooms were needed. As construction began, I was sent photos as the buildings took shape. The school is so remote and off-road that all supplies and equipment were brought to the construction site using donkeys and mules. It was finished just before the monsoon began in May 2017. The children finally had a safe, dry place to learn again. £13,000 that was donated by the Country That Shook paid for 1 new earthquake-proof classroom block containing 2 classrooms to be built. In April 2018, 3 years after the quake, I finally went back and went with the Gurkha Welfare Trust to visit the school on an epic 4-day adventure through the country. Along the way, I reacquainted myself with this land that had had such an impact on my life these past few years. The school had prepared a ceremony for our arrival, a plaque to unveil on the wall of the classroom, and beautiful dancing and singing from the students too. It was a magical whirlwind. The following few weeks that I spent in the country were a turning point. I think I'd always known that when I went back, I would be inspired to do more, and that's definitely what happened. I'd been in touch with Sabin, a local guide since before the earthquake, connected by a friend in London who had sung his praises. But we didn't meet up until April 2018, when we trekked to his family village in Darding. Spending time in Baseri village with Sabin and his family, meeting local people and teaching in the school highlighted many other beautiful and complex things about Nepalese culture that I hadn't appreciated before, and some other issues that I realised I wanted to help with. The first was the lack of basic equipment in schools. A lot of schools have been rebuilt, but funding for resources within them has been mislaid. Basic things such as desks and benches and whiteboards. So there are children in schools such as Sri Devastan, a school for infant children, where they were sitting on the floor to learn. Despite being really eager to learn, it's much more difficult to format and organise a class of children when they're sat on the floor. And parents are more likely to send their children to a school further away, up to an hour to walk, if it has better facilities. So in 2018, we started putting all funds raised from the sales of the book to buying benches and desks for schools. The results are amazing to see and only inspire us to continue to help more schools. The second initiative is relating to menstruation, which is a taboo subject in Nepal and in much of the world. There is lots of movement happening around it to alter the perception and change the experience for women, especially in rural areas. In 2018, we fundraised to provide reusable menstruation kits to women and girls in Darding. It's Sabin's girlfriend Meena who was inspired to make a difference for women. So when we went out in November 2018, she was there to hold the class, deliver the information, and help women to really relax around the subject. Each woman receives a kit which includes 2 base sanitary towels with changeable inserts, 2 sets of knickers, soap, a washing line, and pegs with discrete bags to put them all in. This was really successful for addressing the top-line issue in the country, which is general feminine hygiene and sexual education. It was really only possible because so many amazing people came together to be a part of it in some way. And it really inspired me to think about what is possible when we all work together. Individually, each of us can make a difference, but when we come together we can create change. In 2019, we used creativity to demonstrate that, asking people from around the world to draw a Nepali schoolgirl, and then creating this crowd illustration from all the entries, much more impactful. It shows how art can be a tool for connection, helping us to break down barriers. And that's the deeper set challenge to address. Because there is a deeply entrenched misconception that women are dirty and impure when they are bleeding. The possibility is not to enforce them to change any practices that they have around their menstruation, but to empower them to know that change is an option, and that it has to be something that is accepted on a community level, that we do together with communication. Now menstruation workshops that we are holding are evolving to include a creative session that explores fears and reminds us that all women are the same, to include more interaction, teaching skills such as making their own sanitary towels, allowing women to get involved and know that they are part of something bigger, that their voice really matters. So you see, all of this has evolved from writing a few verses on a bus 4 years ago, and it will continue as we grow, collaborate, understand more, and reach more women. To find out more about either campaign, visit www.thecountrythatshook.com.